So I began to cry out in God's name. I said, "Oh Lord, why have thou forsaken me in this place with these creatures? God, please help me in some way. Get me out of this. This is terrible." And all of a sudden, the entire room shook. And through my eyes, I could see, standing on the left-hand side of me, another large, tall, around 7 foot, 7.5 foot, gray alien walked up beside of this table I'm laying on. And he waved his hand and told the others to stop what they was doing. One of the smaller ones in one of the black spacesuits said to him, "Why, I'm almost finished." And he said, "Stop now." And he said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I thought that God was going to answer him." So at that moment they released me and even raised me up off the table. And the alien, the tall one, began to tell me that there were many things that I needed to know about. And one was about the one true God. He told me that our God was his God, and that there was only one God. He talked about all the religions of our world and all the way that all the different religions believed in so many different gods here on our planet. But he told me plainly that was not the case, that there was only one God. And he said that was the God of Abraham. And I truly believe him. The God of Abraham is the only and the one true God. And his name is I Am. And we all know this. And that's what he said. So then he leads me through this room that I was in. And he had this small blue piece of glass in his hand. It looked like glass, or maybe looked like Lexan or something. And he began to show me pictures in this small piece of glass of past events here on Earth and past events even in our universes. And he said, he asked me if I would like to see the one true God. And I relinquished to him, yes, absolutely. There was no reason that I wouldn't want to see God. God would be the number one thing I would ever want to see. And he said, "Let me show you." So we walked across the room more toward the edge of this room that we was in. And a window opened up on the side of this room that we was in an oval type of shape. It was all so unreal. Words cannot compare to what I'm talking about. There are no words that can compare to what I'm talking about. And as this window opened, I was blinded by the light. Blinded by light, I fell to my knees and I could not see, for the light felt like it became part of me. And in this moment, God spoke to me. And it was such a massive feeling. All at the same time, the alien was telling me that they wasn't allowed to go any closer to God than where we was. That it was like a boundary, and that nothing in all the galaxies or universes was allowed to get any closer to God than where we was. So I understood that there was some jurisdiction even in the universe toward even aliens and God. And he didn't know it. But all at the same time, God was speaking to me. And it was just this ominous type of feeling that was beyond anything else I've ever experienced in my life. And as I beheld the light of God, and I say the light of God because I wasn't standing in His presence, but I could see where He was and the look like universe that He was in. And it was so beautiful. And there was no words to compare, no words whatsoever, because I felt this wholeness, because I felt so close to God at that moment that nothing in life had ever compared to that very moment of being this close to God. It was just this fantastic feeling that I can't even describe to anyone how powerful this feeling was. And one thing that God said to me that I will share with everyone is that I'm on a mission. God has me on a mission. And this mission is a mission of the truth. And the truth we know is nothing but God. So now the alien begins to tell me things after this event. He takes me through many more things. He leads me over to another room, and he says he's got something fantastic to show me, and he wants me to watch. So a small cylinder came down from we'll say the ceiling or wherever it came down from, and it was in front of me. And there was all of these pieces of equipment, like similar to computers, but not, yet different. When all of a sudden this cylinder began to fill with light. And all these little beams of light was swirling into a circle inside this cylinder. And as I watched, what was he doing? He was recreating me in this cylinder. And he was explaining how that I would live on forever no matter what. That they had took my DNA and had recreated me in some way. And it was me. It was me at this very moment. It wasn't me as a child. It was me at this particular moment in life. It was so amazing. There was just no words to even describe this entire event. No words whatsoever could ever compare. And there I was, looking at myself inside this tube. This tube had me in it. And one of the smaller black suited aliens, about 4 foot, 4.5 feet, called for another one, and they began to push me in a cylinder into another room, and me and the larger alien followed it. And as we did, there was this circular type doorway that we went through, and as I began to go through this doorway, I looked in, and there were thousands of tubes with people in them. Thousands. I can't even guesstimate. Thousands. And he took my tube out into the center, the alien, and raised it up into the center of these thousands of other people. And he left me hanging in the center. And there was a man on my right and a man on my left in a tube. And all the other thousands of people were around us. It was such an amazing experience. You have no idea what I'm talking about. But it was way beyond man's dreams. Man's dreams couldn't even hold the light to this. It was so far beyond anything even that I had studied or learned about or could even talk about. That's how fantastic it all was. It was so uncanny, so godlike. It was, I just can't describe this feeling that I had and all this going on. And then the alien began talking to me about how I was special, how I was different, how there were things I could do and things I was going to do in the future, and it was just all so amazing. I don't even know how to tell all of this story because it's so amazing at what really happened to me. The alien began talking about how he wanted me to stay with them and to teach them more about our kind and about us in general, compassion, love, all those things that are all human-like. And he talked about how they were so different than us and that they wanted to learn from us all they could. So I was totally blown away by this. And he told me, he said, if I stay with them, they wouldn't be able to bring me back for a long time. And I was thinking about my family here on earth and even everything, my mother, everything. And the alien even told me, he said, if I stayed with them, much of my family would be gone before I would be able to return to Earth. So there wasn't really any way I was going to stay with the aliens. And I am leaving parts of this story out because I think it would be probably more on a need-to-know basis. But I just could not stay with them. I felt that at the time my place was here, back on this planet, where I belonged with my family. And especially after him telling me that over half of my living relatives would be dead across an amount of time, I knew that I had to come back and be with my family so that I would get to talk to all my family. So I would get to see them again. He didn't tell me exactly which family members, but across a small amount of time I had lost many, many family members even after I had came back. So I now know that everything he told me was the truth. He said to me, I proclaimed to him that I didn't want to stay, that I needed to come back. And he said that the governments of the world were always trying to kill them, shoot them down, anything in this fashion to be able to grasp their technology, because they were one of the oldest places in the universe. They had come from one of the oldest places in the universe and was some of the first life that was created. How much older was they than us? I am not sure. He did not disclose that. He did disclose and show me where they came from in the universe. He showed me a double sun star system with 3 planets. And these 3 planets were completely different. And they were ruled by one individual. And he called this individual by name. But I'm not going to say that here. I'm just going to say that he talked about how their worlds was much different than ours. How things there were controlled. And was a completely controlled type of environment. How that this one king, will say, or this one leader they have ruled over these 3 planets. Then he began to tell me that they couldn't bring me back to Earth because I had already been missing for about 6 or 7 hours. So he wanted me to stay because it was daytime and they didn't want to come back to the planet at the very moment because it was so dangerous for them to traverse here during the daytime. And then he began to say that they usually only send drones here during the day, but sometimes they do visit during the day, but not as much as they used to because of all the superior equipment that we have today compared to many years ago. So he offered to me a way to come back home. But he also said that in order for me to come back home, that I would have to fly back home myself. And he said I would have to do it in one of these drone ships that they had created. So he took me to the ship, and as we're standing at the ship, he's telling me that I already know how to fly this ship. I don't know how that could be even feasibly possible, but he said that I knew how to fly the ship. That all their ships was controlled by mind control. That all you had to do was think it in order to create it inside of one of their ships. So I proclaimed to him that I was definitely coming home no matter how I had to get here. So he told me exactly what to do, and he led me directly to the ship. The ship looked like maybe a double-ended hatchet or something similar. It was very strange, very odd, and it was not completely circular like I had always thought before. This ship was long but rounded on each end. So after telling me exactly what to do, and me knowing what to do by what he said, this small ship of maybe, we're going to say maybe it was 20, I'm just guesstimating it 20 feet long. And it was a drone craft. I could not stand up in it or sit up in it by any means. I had to lay down. And between these two sections of ship was a pad and a headrest. And I laid back on both of them. And the ship closed together. And when the ship closed together, I could see through it. It became invisible. It was massively different than anything I'd ever saw or dreamed of through all my studies. And he let me know before I laid in the ship, all I had to do was think it. So I began to think about going home. And the ship energized instantly. As I began to leave where I was at, I started sailing through space for home. It seemed like faster and faster and faster. The faster it became, it was like the harder it was to breathe. And I was having to think slower and think slower because I was going so fast that I could not hardly breathe. When all of a sudden I broke through the clouds, and I was flying through the clouds on the planet, and I was going faster and faster and faster. And I was trying to think slower and slower because I couldn't hardly breathe. I'll never forget the feeling. And all of a sudden I looked down, and my car was parked across the street from my house, and I swooped down, and it swooped over my house. And all of a sudden, it wobbled with me in it, and it careened sideways to the left and came back around over my house. And the ship divided, and it was like it spat me out, and a bluish green light surrounded me. is I went down toward my house. And all of a sudden, I was sitting on the bed. And the whole experience was over. And at that moment, I was very glad that it was. And I thank the Lord to be back on this planet where I am now. And from that time, I've learned many things and know many things. And I don't discuss them with anyone. I do still study them. And now not only do I study them, I study all the governments of the world, and I see the turmoil in the world and how we all fight each other, and it's so ridiculous. I don't even know how to explain it, that why must all the religions of this world fight each other over their religion? It's so crazy. I mean, God wants everybody to be able to believe in their own way. And to... Yes, God wants everybody in the world to believe in their own way. But to come together as one, as an awe-inspiring belief in God, that we know that all the religions fight against each other. It's time for all these things to cease. It's time for us all to get together in the world and be as one as we worship our own God in our own way. God wants us all to be this way, to just be nicer as nations to people, and stop all the killing worldwide, and quit treating people wrong and start treating people right the way you should be. To live right. To be more normal than the world is today. Because the world is in an uproar, and it's definitely time, God says, for the world to come together and to understand that there is one true God, and we all worship Him in our own way, and we all see Him for who He is in our own way. But even though we do, as a world, we still have to come together to be as one, to realize more things even about our own world. Until we can become one, we can't become as whole as we need to be as a world and as a people, so that we can advance ourselves even farther than we have today. And I want people to know today, I consider myself the flying man. One of the only men who have really one of the only people who have came out and told the truth about all these things and all these confusion of people believing this way and that way. That's really not the case. We all know it's not the case. I am the flying man, and I can tell you now that that is not the case. That is not what God wants. God wants us all together as one, and that is the way we all need to be. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.